Welcome to the Me and Money podcast, where your hosts and certified financial planners, Matt Fizell and Elliott Appel, share their thoughts on hot topics, important concepts, and real-life stories in personal finance. Hear from Matt and Elliott as they share lessons learned in their own financial journeys and those they've witnessed throughout their careers while helping clients. Have a question you'd like to hear discussed on a future episode of the podcast? You can reach out to Matt or Elliott or drop your question at the link listed in the show notes. Before we get to the episode, we'd like to remind you that while both Matt and Elliott are financial planners, they are not your financial planner, and this podcast is only intended for educational purposes. For full disclosures, please be sure to listen to the end of the episode or check out the show notes on your favorite podcast platform. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Matt Fizell and Elliott Appel.
Welcome back to another episode of the Me and Money podcast. Elliott, you look freshly tanned. How was your trip?
I'm feeling refreshed. I just got back from Mexico and it was very nice, although coming back to this weather is not so nice. So I'm feeling good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. And I know you were saying you've had some change on how you might approach work in the future. Tell us a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about spending well in the next couple of episodes after today. So I just wanted to give a little teaser for the audience.
Yeah. Realistically, I'm probably not going to change anything, but longingly, it'd be nice to work a little bit less. It was nice to just have a little more free time and a little more space to think. And coming off that is really nice, but maybe that just means a few more vacations here and there.
Yeah. All right. Well, on the note of vacations, and we just talked about credit cards, we also just wanted to take this episode to talk about cybersecurity. And a lot of this has to do with like your credit applications or loan applications, account numbers, all those kind of things. So Elliott, why don't you just brief the audience on the headline that caught our attention and why we're going to talk about this today?
Yeah. So you had mentioned this to me about, is it ghost students?
Yeah, ghost students.
Proper term? Ghost students and people taking out student loans in people's names who are not actually going to school, I guess is the title. And so it was just sort of a reminder for you and me of what are some basic things that we can be doing in everyday life to help protect ourselves, even if we're not going to school necessarily, but we have financial accounts, we have a credit history. How do we protect all these things that we've been building for decades?
Yeah. And I think too, we just want to hit like some of the common scams that we see. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not stupid, I don't click on those phishing emails. I think this is still a really good episode to listen to because you probably do have either parents or grandparents or maybe just some other family members or loved ones who might be a little bit more prone to these types of scams and fraud type things. And I'll link to the clip I watched on YouTube. But what struck me about this whole ghost student thing was this actually happened to someone who's a pretty public figure on, I think it's Good Morning America. And as they were going through him talking about, someone applied to this community college in his name, he never knew about that. They took out student loans in his name. He got the notification about his credit score dipping. And then at the very end, he says, what's the worst about this is it was just so easy to prevent it in the first place. And what he was talking about was just simply freezing your credit, right? And so that's the first thing. Again, for anyone listening, like it's really easy to freeze and it is equally as easy to unfreeze your credit. So if you do find yourself in a position where you're going to apply for a mortgage or a car loan or open a new credit card, like Elliott just did, it's so easy to just unfreeze the credit. And then after that transaction goes through or that card is open, just close it back up. So that would be the number one thing that we're going to recommend in this episode and having those conversations with your loved ones. So Elliott, where should people go to freeze their credit?
Yeah. So to freeze it, go to each of them 3 main credit bureaus. There's a few other ones out there if you want to make this sort of an extension of going a little bit further, maybe bonus points, Gold Star, whatever you want to call it. But Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax are the main 3 ones that you want to freeze with. And you go on, you create an account with them. It's super simple, as Matt had mentioned. I just applied for a new credit card. So I went to all 3, I temporarily unfroze it, which meant I just unfroze it for that day, or maybe I did a few days, and then it automatically freezes back up at the end of that. So I didn't have to go back in and log in. I just had to log in that once. So once you have the login, it really only takes maybe 5 minutes at all 3 of them, depending on how quickly you are and if you know your password and all that stuff. But I think that's a good point, like that you brought up, Matt, and perspective of if there's people you care about who definitely don't have their credit frozen. And that's just low hanging fruit that you go tell them to do it. And it could be literally a life-changing thing for them if someone were to take out loans in their name.
Yeah. And it's just something a lot of people have probably heard about, but they don't know how to do it or how easy it is. And it's free. I want to stress that because a lot of those credit reporting agencies, they have like Identity Shield or whatever.
Just skip those. When it starts asking for it, skip it. You don't need the paid account.
Yeah. And this happened to my father-in-law, not the student loan thing, but his identity was compromised and someone did try to take out a line of credit in his name. This was back over the holidays. And, it's something too where you will get a lot of annoying marketing emails from these agencies, like, because they're going to try and sell you those things, but they will also tell you when someone has tried to access your credit. And that can be, the more time or the sooner you catch these things, the easier it is to fix them or to contact the bank or whoever is trying to access your credit and put a stop to it, right? So I hate spam emails and I hate those advertisements just as much as the next person. But again, time is of the essence with the identity theft and with those fraudulent applications. And if you have to subject yourself to a little bit more spam just to have that on your side and get that instant notification, I think it's totally worth it.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's something too where, there are some challenges with just like the financial system and how things work, especially if you're trying to protect a loved one. That could be something too where, if you get your mom or your dad or your grandparents like set up on this service, you can probably just have those Experian and Equifax alerts forwarded to your email to help. I don't know, there's not really a good way otherwise, unless they're going to put you as a joint holder on the account or you have power of attorney over it to get that information or to have like instant access to that type of information. So that was just something I thought of now where you can probably set up an auto forward to your email to get those alerts too. If you do have an older loved one that you might be caring for who may not be quite as technically literate, such as my grandmother.
That I like to do on that, Matt, is banks often have alerts, like we were talking prior to the episode of, hey, my grandma never spends with more than $1,000 as an example. Oftentimes at the bank, you can set up alerts for transactions above a certain amount. You could have that go to your email instead. It won't necessarily obviously catch it in the moment because it will have already happened, but it allows you to get on it sooner. And or a lot of online budgeting tools also have those sort of alerts. So you could also set up their financial accounts and that sort of thing and have it forwarded to you or you getting the notices for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you made a good point too, Elliott, talking about just like web hygiene. So what are some of your tips for, using Wi-Fi? I know you were just in a foreign country, so you probably were tempted to use your Wi-Fi, but what are some things that people might want to think about, like when they are traveling or just even going to the coffee shop to, hang out and read a book or, write a book or whatever the heck they're doing there?
Yeah, it's really tempting to get on that public Wi-Fi, but it's a very dangerous thing. So whenever possible, I prefer using the hotspot off my phone. It wasn't possible in the country I was in, so I was using a VPN or a virtual private network. And so that's another way to help protect your web traffic when you're trying to do basically anything. Even if you're not accessing something that you really care that much about, I'd still use it because there can still be some negative consequences to getting into even things that you don't care about.
Yeah. And there's plenty of videos out there that show, these hackers and how easy it is for them to get through firewalls on public networks. And I would agree. It's just really not worth the risk. No. You can wait, especially if you're just at the coffee shop, you can wait a half hour to check your email or log in
or get the VPN.
Account. Yeah.
They're less than a few dollars a month typically.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else would you have out there, Elliott, for just some cybersecurity tips?
I'm a big fan of two-factor authentication and using an app when possible versus SMN text or email, just because you imagine, hey, if your email gets hacked, but the two-factor authentication's there and now the hacker has access to your email, you have issues. So whether it's Google Authenticator or other apps out there that offer that two-factor authentication, that's helpful. I also like verbal passwords when possible, particularly with financial institutions. It almost reminds me of sort of prehistoric times in a way, but it feels like it's more secure, right? If our passwords are out there and they're in databases because it's been breached, and let's say you have a loved one who's older who's using the same iteration of that same password at multiple websites, chances are a hacker has that and may use that on another website of theirs. But if they were to call the financial institution, let's say they have the social, the date of birth and all that, but you have to have a verbal password. And let's say it truly is a completely random word and not one that they've used in other passwords. You sort of shut off access now at that point. Now, the downside to that is your loved one has to actually remember this word. Otherwise, it becomes a very, very challenging process to get back into the account. I've gone through that before with folks. But otherwise, I'm a big fan of that. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially like in this day and age of like social engineering. And I know that's a big, fancy like data security term, but really what that is it's just understanding that you could have a conversation with someone. I'm not saying the person at the till at the coffee shop is going to steal your life savings, but you probably do exchange some pretty important details of your history with them, or a friend, or someone just sitting next to you who could be a complete stranger and over listening your conversation, right? And there's I think there's some really fascinating YouTube videos out there of just like watching these hackers do their thing. But they can just call, like, even if you call someone at a customer support service center, like, hey, how's your day? Like, oh, great. Like, I just went to my favorite vacation spot in Mexico, right? And that might be one of those security passwords on your accounts. And the hackers know what they're doing. A lot of that information also lives on your social media channels, and things like that. So just be careful. And I'm a big fan of choosing those security answers that are not actually questions that you'd have the answer to, and just knowing
just
what word you're going to put in that box, right? Like, instead of what is your mother's maiden name, which just about anyone could figure out with, 3 minutes of Google search, right? Like, picking some of those really like fluid answers, like who's your favorite artist, and just having a name that you would use instead of an actual artist, just to protect yourself. I think it's crazy that those questions really haven't changed like since the invention of the internet, right?
Yeah, I feel like we see the same 5 ones over, and then when I don't see those same 5 ones, I'm like, oh, that's a different question.
Yeah. So yeah, I think those are good. Another one too is just using like a password manager. I think you could make the argument, right? Like they're a big target for someone to try and hack, but if you can just have a really, really strong master password and change it on a semi-frequently basis, then you can just use those auto-generated random passwords for your actual password on a lot of websites. And I think that right there just increased your cybersecurity by 1,000 times compared to the average person. I mean, I'm probably sure they'll have it. They do it every new year, right? It probably just came out like, what's the most common password on the internet? And it's usually password or password 1 or 0000 on your touchpad, right? So I think they're a really good option just to encourage the use of completely random passwords that you're not even going to remember. And if you don't know your password, it's really hard for other people to figure it out. It can be annoying, and I have to reset my password a lot, but I think that's good too.
I'm a big fan of that. And I would also add, if you're not quite to the point where you want to use an online or electronic password manager, keeping it in a notebook maybe isn't the worst thing in the world. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I'd rather have that and different passwords than reusing the same password or some combination that I often see folks using. So just consideration, and make sure you leave plenty of space to cross out old passwords and put new ones in. That's where I've seen issues in the past, where there's 4 passwords, they're written down like that, right next to each other, and you're not quite sure which one it is at this point. So just make sure when you're designing that notebook that you're able to put in some substitute passwords later on.
Yeah. It can also be very helpful when you're helping parents or grandparents. Like, I have a sheet for my dad, and every time he messages me, what's the password? It's like, where's your sheet, right? Like, go find your sheet. Yep. I don't know what your password is. Go find it.
100%.
So yeah, I love that. And I think too, like, especially in this day and age, it is kind of weird, but the more you can take off of your digital device, the more secure you're actually being, when it used to be kind of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are all great things. Any final tips or other ideas you'd have for our listeners, Elliott?
I would say the last one, and it's probably intuitive, but I'm going to mention it anyway, is just make sure you're updating your software, whether that's your phone software, your laptop software, whatever it is. I know a lot of times people just say, hey, skip and skip and skip, but a lot of times those updates are important. And I think that's just important to keep in mind as things go along, that those updates are meaningful.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think those are the main things that I would do. What about you?
Yeah. I would just kind of piggyback off of that. Like, if you do get an email from, I don't know, like, I see this one every now and then. Like, I almost never shop at Walmart. That's nothing against Walmart. There's just not like one that's really convenient to us. But every now and then you'll get like those fake emails like, oh, like, your recent purchase of this amount, like, we need you to re-verify your information. Like, click this button. But if you look at the domain name in those email addresses, it's not like at walmart.com. It's like at walmart.t.com to make it look like Walmart. And for the love of God, like, none of these companies are ever going to call you and ask you for your password or your social security number. Like, that is the number one way that they get people. And those are all predicated on isolating you. So again, if you go to like any major website like Microsoft or Apple or Amazon or your bank, it will say right on the website, we will never call you and ask you for your personal information. So always be the one to initiate the call. I know it sounds silly, but like, just look up the current customer service number and
don't use the one in the email.
Yeah, don't do that. Always go from the website. I think we can save a lot of problems just by going straight to the source.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then I don't know, this might be a newer one and we might be a little bit ahead of the time, but I think like limiting the amount of like voice and video you put on your social media is probably a good thing these days. Like,
the irony of us doing this episode.
Well, that's true. That is very true. Dang it, Elliott, you ruined my point. But the AI thing is kind of scary, like how good some of those tools are getting at spoofing or being able to appear as something other than they are. So
you just keep creating content, Matt, and we'll have a Matt robot out there.
This is why I hate marketing. Listening. I have a perfect excuse now. I'm doing it for my cybersecurity. But anyways, I didn't give away any of my secret answers. So this is not advice. I hope the AI picks that up, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, sounds good. I think we gave a lot of good tips here. If there's any other tips that our listeners have, like, please let us know. Like, we want to share those with the rest of the listeners, and we'd love to hear from you. So if there's any questions or experiences or stories that you want us to share here, and it just helps spread the good word, let us know.
Yeah, please do.
All right. See you next time, Elliott.
Enjoy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Me and Money podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Have a question you'd like to suggest for a future episode? drop Matt or Elliott a question at their email, or use the linked form in the show notes. Like what you heard? It would be a tremendous help to us in our mission of having real conversations about personal finance by leaving us a review on your favorite podcast app. A few words can go a long way in connecting those looking for content like ours on their app of choice. You can also support the show by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thanks again for listening, and be on the lookout for future episodes soon.
The Me and Money podcast is hosted and produced by Harmony Outsourcing Services LLC. Matt Fizell is an investment advisor representative of Harmony Wealth L.L.C. Elliott Appel is an investment advisor representative of Kindness Financial Planning LLC. However, the views and opinions expressed by Matt and Elliott in this podcast are not intended as individualized investment advice on behalf of Harmony or Kindness, or as tax, accounting, or legal advice. Although we gather information from sources that we deem to be reliable, we cannot guarantee the accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of any information prepared by any unaffiliated third party. When specific investments or types of investments are mentioned, such mention is not intended to be a recommendation or endorsement to buy or sell the specific investment. Harmony is a registered investment advisor authorized to do business in the states of Wisconsin and Texas and other jurisdictions where exempted. Kindness is a registered investment advisor authorized to do business in Wisconsin and Washington and in other jurisdictions where exempted. Registration as a registered investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. This website contains links to the Harmony and Kindness websites that provide general information about the advisory services offered by Harmony and Kindness. These links are provided as a convenience only. Harmony and Kindness can only provide individualized services after you sign an agreement and receive required disclosures. Users of this website may, but are not required to, engage the services of Harmony or Kindness for advisory services. Please remember that all investments involve varying degrees of risk, and the future performance of any specific investment or investment strategy is not guaranteed to be profitable or equal to any historical performances. As a final note, we'd encourage you to reach out to your financial professionals before implementing any of the strategies or concepts discussed in this podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.